This week, to be closer to China, the world's second largest economy, the world's largest trader, the largest contributor to global poverty reduction, and the largest troop contributor to UN peacekeeping. Economics, diplomacy, politics, military. China is now engaging the world in all areas.
中国吸收了各国的经验，上下一致，决心很大，包括中央和老百姓都是同心同德，这是我们所取得的一个很重要的一个原因。
我们中国人民呢，在70年的奋斗历程里面，在中国共产党的领导之下，摸索出了一条适合中国国情的造福于人民的发展道路和发展模式，这是一个最大的一个原因。
What does China's growth mean to the world?
最近30年来，世界经济的通货膨胀率一直处于比较低的，在低位运行。为什么？中国的便宜的、优质的商品，有效地缓解了世界通货膨胀的这种压力。
And how can China contribute to a better world?
我们要对整个世界和平的建设要起积极作用、促进作用。其次，我们要对整个国际秩序的这个捍卫者，同时我们也是对世界经济发展的贡献者。
This week, be closer to China. On September 27th, just days before the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China on October 1st, 2019, the Chinese government issued a white paper, China and the World in the New Era. Its timing was no coincidence. Its purpose was to respond to the world's questions about China and to help the international community better understand China's development. In my opinion, it is the clearest exposition of what the Chinese government wants the world to know and to think about China. The 18,000-word white paper has 4 parts. The first part tells about China's remarkable development, based on self-reliance and hard work, including a 70-fold increase of GDP per capita at constant prices, more than doubling life expectancy to 77 years, and lifting over 800 million people out of poverty. The second part, focusing on China's development, is called an opportunity for the world in contrast to the China threat theory. The third part, amidst the most profound changes in a century, depicts a prosperous and beautiful world that is the common aspiration of all peoples. The last part explains how China contributes to a better world by pursuing mutually beneficial cooperation and common development via a new kind of globalization and global governance. The white paper is a comprehensive argument for why China's system works well for China and how, at the same time, it benefits the world. Does it make the case? And for that matter, why now? This is Closer to China. The world's largest single-structure airport terminal. In September, after 5 years construction, Beijing Daxing International Airport was put into operation. It is expected to handle 45 million passengers annually by 2022. This demonstrates China's engineering and construction capabilities and, more importantly, the country's openness to the world. To explore China's developmental course over the last 7 decades and to discern how the country will interact with the world in the future, I meet with senior politicians, economists, and historians. Rana Mitta, director of the China Center at the University of Oxford. Wang Lingui, Secretary General of National Institute for Global Strategy, and Wei Jianguo, Vice Chairman and Deputy Executive Officer of China Center for International Economic Exchanges. Chinese government has issued many white papers, but this is the first relating China's development with the world. Why was it released on the eve of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China?
After 70 years of development, China has become the second largest economy in the world. With that in mind, what international influence will be established by China? Does China's growth bring risks to the global community? Will China seek hegemony after getting strong? Could China's growth facilitate world peace? And can China's development also bring dividends to other countries, in particular improving the living standards for all? On the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, this white paper is published primarily to respond to questions and address people's concerns. Also, considering the current global economic downturn, the eyes of the world watch China's opening up for opportunities. China intends to contribute more to the world, building upon the past 40 years of reform and opening up in China.
China has transformed its economy in just a few decades, a remarkable achievement that had taken developed countries several hundred years to achieve. The country's economic strength has greatly increased, and so has its people's livelihood. Per capita GDP increased from around 120 RMB in 1952 to about 65,000 RMB in 2018. China's rural population living under the current poverty line decreased from 770 million in 1978 to 16.6 million in 2018, making China the largest contributor to global poverty reduction. In addition, a preliminary social security system has been established, including elderly care, medical care, minimum subsistence, housing, and education. It is the largest in scale, covering the largest population on Earth. China talks about its special path, China's path. Let's start by analyzing what are the key components of China's path.
I think the Chinese path embodies three components. First is the most critical factor, the CPC's leadership, which is essential. Second is China's reform and opening up. With the fine traditions of the Chinese nation and wisdom of the Chinese people, from the central leadership to the general public, and drawing experiences from other countries, we have supported reform and opening up with one heart and one mind. That is an important factor contributing to our success. Third is also very important, the 5-year plans made by the Chinese government. The timetable and roadmap of those plans are ensured to be unaffected by administration or personnel change. Those three components set the course of socialism with Chinese characteristics.
What is the CPC's mission and original aspiration? It is to rejuvenate the Chinese nation and seek happiness for the Chinese people. Based on that, the CPC has the capability of long-term strategic planning and strong enforcement at the tactical level. I believe the original aspiration and these two capabilities of the CPC have underpinned the great achievements that China has made over the past 70 years.
Considering the success of the Chinese model in China and the application in some countries beginning, are the elements of Chinese success, can they be considered universal values in terms of the ubiquity or the broad applicability of them?
I don't think the Chinese path represents a universal value. China faces its own unique national conditions. Our intention is neither to export our model nor import foreign models. The Chinese path was forged based on our particular characteristics of development, drawing strength from both the lessons and experiences in recent years of China's growth. I believe that other countries, in particular developing countries, must not blindly copy China's practices. Instead, they should target their own issues based on their national conditions and unique state characteristics.
Stenders is a Latvian brand known for its bath and shower products. Last year's China International Import Expo, or the CIIE, helped it get greater exposure and more business.
We've seen our income from sales increase since the Expo's opening. We've signed some big deals with corporate clients, such as Sinopec.
The CIIE is the world's first import-themed national-level expo. Trade representatives see it more than just business opportunities. Jute is a vegetable fiber from Bangladesh. It was used for making ropes and sacks in the past and is now spun into bags, shoes, and handcrafts. Before the 2018 CIIE, it was almost unheard of in China. Thanks to the Expo, it is now being sold in one of Shanghai's high-end department stores.
We are working with my country poor people, and most of the employee was women. There was like housewife, no work. If we make a platform for my country poor people, then they can earn more, they can good job, and their lifestyle will be more developed.
According to the World Bank, stronger open trade policies enable economic growth for all. By the end of 2018, China had trade relations with more than 230 countries and regions. Allowing more people to benefit from China's expanding economy and booming market, the world's largest trader in goods is promoting trade liberalization and opening its markets wider to the world.
China's imports in the next 15 years are expected to exceed $30 trillion for goods and $10 trillion for services. Altogether, that's $40 trillion in the next 15 years. You can do the calculation. When China's importation of goods and services reaches $40 trillion, it will be a tremendous driving force for all countries in the world.
Is there any internal concerns that by being so open that China is putting pressure on its own employment, and is there a possibility that unemployment can grow in China because China is still a developing country itself?
China's development has benefited from global support. We have learned technologies, have drawn on experiences, gained capital and managerial know-how from other countries. Now it is our turn to make contributions to the global community after our growth. That is the first point. Second, the China International Import Expo, the CIIE, can also meet people's ever-growing demand for a better life. These imports could also stimulate China's domestic market. Third, China has sufficient foreign exchange reserves. At this point, China should assume its due responsibility as a major stakeholder to help those participating countries grow through the CIIE. So I think that it is more like sending charcoal in snowy weather rather than adding flowers to the brocade. More importantly is the notion that all within the 4 seas are brothers. So let's join hands to fight for a beautiful homeland.
I think looking at the wider spread of the 70 years, we might see that over and over again, the periods when China has made some of the boldest moves and has also been most respected and engaged with the rest of the world are its most open periods. So let's think about 1972, when President Nixon visited China, and it was a symbol that China was opening up and the rest of the world was ready to actually take China on board and engage in meaningful, equal conversations. And, you know, to this day, I think everyone realizes that that was a moment of huge historical importance. And why? Because it was about engagement and not closing off.
One of the primary themes of the white paper is that China's development benefits the world. So let's list the major ways in which the very successful development of China has benefited people throughout the world.
Personally, I think the greatest dividend brought by China to the world is a stable country, a growing economy, and a prosperous society of 1.4 billion Chinese people. It is a remarkable achievement within the world. Otherwise, a divided and backward China would be disastrous for the entire global community.
不断发展的中国
China's growth is more closely intertwined with the global community. Take a simple example. China is sometimes called the world's factory as a producer of a large quantity of good quality yet inexpensive products that reach all corners of the world through trade. Think about it. Over the past 30 years, what contributed to the low inflation rate of the global economy? It is China's good quality yet inexpensive products that effectively eased the pressure of global inflation. China has contributed 30% of the global economic growth on average for the past 3 decades.
The East Coast Rail Link in Malaysia was relaunched in July of 2019.
The ECRL will drive the development of commerce, logistics, trade, and even tourism along the route in the future.
The project had been suspended after Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad's alliance won the 2018 general election. The suspension was lifted after signing of a supplementary agreement that reduced the construction costs and made other adjustments.
With the improved ECRL at 44 billion, the loan amount from China Exim Bank will be reduced substantially.
China agreed to negotiate. China did not try to muscle or strong-arm Malaysia into honoring the flawed terms reached under the previous government. A solution with a new contract that scaled back the cost of the BRI project itself. That it follows a pattern that we saw in Myanmar with the Chao Pyu port.
Based on principles of mutual respect, fairness, justice, and win-win cooperation, China promises to build a new model of international relations. It is by no means easy.
The idea of the China threat has been growing. At the same time, China has been contributing to the world and talking about mutual cooperation. So how do you explain that paradox?
Indeed, the whole world has been amazed by what China has been able to achieve in such a short period of time. They see it for real, like the old saying that seeing is believing. For those who have not seen it, they have some misunderstanding about China's development. Second, I think a major reason is that some Western media looked at China with a shaded view, always assuming that China's growth is a threat to them, and vilified, even distorted China's development.
As we look in more recent years, where China has been engaging very proactively with the world, do you see that as a fundamental shift? And in most recent times, we see some pushback from various sources and for various reasons. So are those from a historical point of view, how significant are those in terms of China's engagement with the world?
Part of the issue is also that standing up to become a global actor is not always an easy place to be. The United States has been the global hegemon since really 1945. It still remains so today, and I have to say that any other country or organization, European Union, China, India, will still got some way to go before they're going to really be able to genuinely rival the United States. The journey may be on the way, but we haven't got there yet. What the US has found over decades, and it hasn't always liked it, is that being on top of the system means that you have both immense responsibilities and that people aren't necessarily going to thank you for it. And also that you have to make sure that your behavior is subject to the kind of analysis and criticism that you can come to expect when you are sitting at the top of the system. It's not always fair, but sometimes it is. And it also means that you have to learn to deal with it in a calm, collected, and somewhat cool manner. And I have to say that different US presidents have managed to do that with different levels of skill and aplomb. Now, China is learning that lesson. There's still some way to go. It's certainly becoming, in some areas, as I've said, an important global citizen, but also knowing how when you sit near the top of the pile, you will be much more exposed is going to be a very valuable lesson, and I think an important one, not just for China, but for other countries that interact with it.
Chapter 3 of the white paper talks about China's views on global affairs, on the international order. So how does China's views on global affairs, the international order, differ from those of the U.S.?
More importantly, today's international economy is driven by globalization and the facilitation and liberalization of trade and investment. Most importantly, today's international economy is driven by globalization and the facilitation and liberalization of trade and investment. The greatest divide between China and the U.S. is that the U.S. intends to put its interests above that of all other countries. It does not work that way. Why? Because while taking a toll on the interests of other countries, it also hurts the U.S. interests. Thus, we believe that the U.S. proposal is typical protectionism and anti-globalization. China calls for joint efforts to respond to problems we share today, such as climate issues, counter-terrorism, regional and income divides among nations, and sustainable development, among other things.
I believe the essence of globalization has not changed, as the whole world is a big market. We used to say the world has turned into a global village. That trend has not changed and will not change. However, globalization in the past was dominated by a few Western countries, which somehow affected the development of developing countries. Today, I think the world is undergoing one of the greatest changes in a century. The primary change factor lies in emerging markets and developing countries. As the emerging markets and developing countries grow, they will demand more presence and voice in the course of globalization to better safeguard their own interests. It is not for us to sacrifice or disproportionately sacrifice interests for the sake of globalization.
Creating a community with a shared future for humanity. The vision was first proposed in 2012, and in 2017, President Xi Jinping raised the idea again in a speech to the World Economic Forum in Davos. According to the white paper, China values mutual respect and equal consultation on political issues, seeks dialogue instead of confrontation on security matters, and promotes open and win-win cooperation in economic development. China respects the diversity of world civilizations, advocates an environmentally friendly developmental model, and advocates joint efforts to fight climate change.
China's plan is to build a community with a shared future for mankind to achieve win-win cooperation and common prosperity.
So, what are the key characteristics of the vision of a community with a shared future for humanity, and why is it now particularly appropriate in today's world?
My understanding of the global community of shared future covers the following three levels. First, people in all countries pursue a good life, which I believe is a pure and real intention shared by all. No people could possibly want to live a displaced, poor life, so I believe that is acceptable to everyone. Second, we need a peaceful environment for development. Development is unlikely to progress in conflict or turbulence. Third, development is not one-sided, nor is it imposed on another. Development entails extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. I believe that, too, is recognized by all and is a fundamental genuine wish of the people. Based on that, let's look to the global community for a shared future. That concept embodies and reflects a vision of the future by all countries, including China.
In the global context, President Xi proposed three deficits: deficits in peace, deficits in development, and deficits in governance. Later, he proposed also the deficit in trust. I think it is a fit description of the global trend, as the world today is undergoing profound change that has not been seen in 100 years. China has proposed the Belt and Road Initiative to build a global community of shared future. How? I think it covers three aspects. First, in terms of peace, President Xi stated that China is always a builder of world peace and will continue to play its positive role in promoting world peace. Second, China is to serve as a guardian of global order. And third, China as a contributor to global economic development. Like President Xi has said, going forward, we aim to address the deficit in trust with interconnected development, economic integration, and shared benefits. Building a global community of shared future is, in fact, evolved from a community of shared interests to a community of shared responsibilities, and then further to a community of a shared future. From my perspective, from shared interests to shared responsibility and into future, demands that we stay united and embrace a better, harmonious world together.
The white paper, China and the World in the New Era, makes the case that China's rise, becoming prosperous and strong, is both a historic achievement for the Chinese people and in the interest of the entire world. The argument is not subtle. China has become the main stabilizing force and power source of the world economy, contributing from 2013 to 2018 more than 28% of world economic growth. The white paper seeks to counter the China threat theory, which is caused by, it states, cognitive misunderstanding, deep-rooted prejudice, a psychological imbalance brought about by the prospect of falling power, and deliberate distortions by vested interests. The white paper reflects a kind of collective frustration that even though China is creating opportunities for all countries to share the benefits of its development through trade, investment, and aid, and it promotes extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, for example with the Belt and Road Initiative, there has been paradoxically increasing pushback against China. I believe that if someone misunderstands me, it is my responsibility to understand her misunderstanding, not blame her for it. It is my task to discern why the misunderstanding in the first place. The conclusion is that China's success boils down to the party's leadership. Without centralized, unified, and firm leadership, the white paper states, China would have tended toward division and disintegration and caused widespread chaos beyond its own borders. In contrast, enabled by the CPC, is President Xi Jinping's vision of building a global community of a shared future. Let's see to be closer to China.